So I will be presenting the keynote presentation to serve as a background of the panel that we will have just now. First of all, I just want to say a big thanks for the Singapore Polytechnic team, the organization team, Ina, Lisa, and Dee, and for our panelists that will be adding a lot of more information and meaningful content to this presentation. So let me share my screen. So let's start first with some context. So there's a lot about that has been talked about the extension of the crisis, how this crisis will affect the economy, how COVID is affecting the economy worldwide. And the point is that the extent of the effects are different in every part of the world. So here I bring the GDP growth for last year, for this year, the forecasting from IMF, and the next year. Okay, this is the latest update that they release after we enter in this crisis, after COVID struck to the whole world. So as you can see, the Asia portion is the one that is least affected because that's the region that is growing faster if you compare the 2019 numbers. So the impact in Asia overall would be much lower than the whole world. And the impact in the world is the worst since 1929. So it's a huge economic crisis that was triggered by COVID-19. On the bottom of the slide, you can see also some highlights. So 21 million people unemployed, filing for claims, jobless claims in US, almost 15% unemployment rate is one of the highest ever in the history of US. The Brazilian GDP, so Brazil is entering the third recession in the last 5 years. So the GDP is expected to drop between 7 to 10%. The German economy is shrinking 7% in 1 year, this year. And next year will take a lot to recover. So the growth will be next to zero in 2020. And China is posting the lowest growth rate since 1976. So since we started recording GDP from the official numbers, this is the second lowest GDP growth posted by China. And Singapore will drop around 3.5%. So if you a little bit lower than the average of the world, but it's still much better than what we see in the Americas, US, South America, Brazil is the biggest country, and Europe. And when we break down the effects, okay, the fear that is spreading through the companies. So how the companies, the business, they see this crisis. So this is a survey with 350 senior risk professionals that is handled by the World Economic Forum. They do this survey every year. And this year, the main topic is about the economic impacts. So the forecasting for this year, before they did, comparing to the previous surveys in 2019, 2018, will be much more, we expect it to be much more towards the environment and towards societal topics. But as you see, because of COVID, everything is converging to economic. So the fear among business professionals, among companies, among entrepreneurs is all about prolonging the recession, the economic impact of COVID, and having a second wave that will drastically hurt the economy in some countries or totally destroy some sectors. And if we compare the growth that we see here worldwide, so this is the growth after countries, economies, governments pumping billions and trillions of dollars in the economy. So even though we have organized governments, organized working to fight the crisis, we will be having around 3 to 4% drop in the economy. So it's seriously hurting the economy, and the fear is already spread all around the business community all around the world. So, but this is the context, right? So let's shift a little bit to more positive news. So in our presentation, we'll be introducing 3 different opportunities that we mapped in the environment. The first pillar is the general opportunities that we see for everyone. So these opportunities are more for individuals and also for companies on changing our habits or establishing new priorities that arose from the COVID situation, the COVID crisis. The second pillar are the opportunities that are there for business overall, not only in Singapore, but all around the world. Okay, so these are emerging trends that were already there: technology trends, work relations, organizational structures, finance, among other topics. They are accelerating now and presenting some opportunities for many companies, many sectors all around the world. And then we have the third pillar, which is the opportunities for Singaporean companies, because we feel Singapore is one of the most well-prepared countries to face the crisis. And the government is responding quite fast with 4 different budgets for economic support for companies and individuals, and some specific supports for some sectors. Moving forward, let's talk about the general opportunities. So under this pillar, I want to highlight 6 opportunities. And obviously there are more, okay? But these are the ones that we consider as most important. So the first is the amount of extra time that people and companies, they suddenly have. So as a staff in a company, or as an individual, as a family member, we have seen a lot of people saying, well, at the beginning of the crisis was like, wow, that's hell, you know, home-based learning. I cannot do my stuff. It's very difficult to stay at home. But after 3 weeks, you know, we also surveyed some of our clients, and everyone saying, well, that's actually not that bad, you know, because I can have time for myself, and it has been a long time that I don't have this, you know, time to focus on priorities that I have been neglected for a long time. And business is one of these priorities that people usually neglect. So the restructuring of the business, or the planning, or the execution of things that they have been neglecting and delaying for a long time. The second opportunity is to breaking habits. So COVID came and totally destroyed very well established organizational cultural process, procedures, policies, because we needed to react very fast to the change and to protect. So suddenly we can work from home, we can skip some rules, some policies to make things happen and to protect from the crisis. And this is a very good opportunity for us to evaluate, you know, how we change and why we are doing things and what we should be doing now, and establishing new priorities. The third opportunity is to optimize work. So one of the most troublesome and inefficient parts of the organizational life, the corporate world, are meetings. So surveys state that, you know, we spend around 23 hours per week in inefficient meetings pre-COVID, and now meetings are getting much more efficient. And it's not only about meetings, it's about the whole work environment and how we work. So people are realizing that they can do more. They save time commuting from home to work, and from work to home, and also on setting up the meetings. And meetings online are much more objective. So once the mature technology is there to enable us to leverage on that, to run efficient meetings, the new culture is arising. And just an example, we are doing a webinar now, and a lot of companies that run exhibitions worldwide, they are shifting to an online version. The fourth topic that I want to highlight is the speed of innovation. So all the rigid systems that you see in our organization, the hierarchy, procedures, complex bureaucracies, so this has been broken by the COVID situation. So as soon as we have the stimulus to change, we realize that this can be done, and can be done quite easily. It's just about having the right stimulus. So postponing change is not an option anymore. And on the top of all the cultural change, we have a lot of opportunities for startups to set up new technology, new ways of doing business, supporting government, supporting companies, supporting society to fight the crisis. So a lot of private equity firms, we have been talking with private equity firms and VCs, they are super excited because a lot of startups are coming with new ideas and new startups coming to the picture. So there's a whole new need for innovation to fight the COVID. The fifth one is the resilience. So for the first time in our generation, we have been tested. The whole world has been tested. So on a very individual basis, specific from organizational companies and communities and government. So this means that we have resiliency plans, but we never tested them. And this is the first time we have been tested, how we respond to that crisis. So this is a really strong and powerful learning moment. So then if you surpass this crisis, once we surpass, we'll be much more prepared for the next crisis that will come. So the way we respond to the COVID, to the health crisis, and also to the economic impacts of this crisis. And the last one that I want to highlight for this pillar is the priorities that we have in life. So, and for our business. So this is the time where we have a little bit more extra time, and we have the stimulus to evaluate what is our priority. So whether our priority is to focus on the business, to plan for growth, or to internationalize, or whether we want to go for education, go for post-graduation, or whatever. Okay, so for the first time, people are thinking bigger. So the whole world, we obviously do this in an individual basis in different timing of our lives. But for the first time, we have an opportunity for most of the world evaluating their priorities within their families, their communities, their companies, and their countries. Let's move forward. So the second pillar is all about the opportunities for business overall. And if you take a look on the highlights, so the 6 pillars that we are bringing here, most of these, you realize that most of these are all about things that we should be doing in the past. We wanted to do, but we have been neglecting this for a long time. So because these things, they are not really urgent in the past, now the new sense of urgency is coming. So the first one, we are talking about digitalization, right? So digitalization is an enabler for gains of efficiency, for gains of profitability, for growth, and even for internationalization. So for the first time, we have the push, a very, very strong push of a trend that was already coming, but now is mandatory. We shift to digitalization, or we just stop existing as a company, as an organization, as a business. Because if you cannot handle the business remotely, your administrative work, for most of the companies, you cannot coordinate work, you'll be dying. If you cannot keep doing business with your partners overseas without traveling, probably your business will not survive. So technology now is mature enough for us to handle this challenge. And everything is shifting to digitalization much faster. Fortunately, in Singapore, we have a lot of support for that. So we'll be talking about this in the end of the presentation. So the second pillar is the workforce efficiency. So many businesses, they realize that they need to improve efficiency of their workforce. I'm not talking about retrenching people. I'm talking about working better with the resources that we have now. Okay, so operations needs to work much more efficiently, and people need to handle the work that only people can do. Okay, when they need to do that. So there's a huge balance and link between what I just mentioned about digitalization and the efficiency of the workforce. Workforce needs to be there for the activities that only the workforce can handle. The rest, we leave to the machines, we leave to the computers. The third pillar is about fixed cost of optimization. So COVID raised very good questions about what we shall be doing with our offices, with the real estate, with the retail space that we have available all around the world. And it's also rebalancing and shaking the market for real estate, because suddenly you don't need to go to office anymore. So you don't need to have a super expensive space in the CBD area. You don't need, in the bigger cities in the world, you don't need to drive 2 hours to get to the office anymore, so you can handle most of the work at home. So this will definitely impact the prices of commercial and residential buildings. But what shall we be doing with the all the fixed structure that we have already? And so first, the clarity of what are the triggers, the drivers for fixed cost. So we need to learn how this fixed cost will affect the business and how heavy it is and how to lower that. So maybe this is a new era for co-working spaces, or even technology, or people will be setting up offices at home. But the thing is, we need to really learn how to lower fixed costs, how to keep that resource to things that are really necessary. Otherwise, we'll be paying a huge amount of money for idle resources that we are not using. And I'm not talking about the manpower resources. This is all about the other fixed costs that we have. So flexibility is the key word now for fixed costs. So how to turn our fixed costs into something more flexible, and how to reduce that, how to optimize the whole structure in that way, so we can survive to the crisis. The fourth pillar, working capital optimization, similar to the fixed costs, right? So what shall we be doing to the cash that we have? So it's the opposite side of the profitability function. So capital is becoming a little bit more limited to many companies. SMEs are suffering much more. So working capital optimization is something that is needed, and how we handle our cash flow, how we access credit in order to keep the operations moving. So the visibility to our cash requirements needs to be much more clear, much more transparent for the organization to be managed properly. And a lot of SMEs, they don't even know what is the capital requirements for them on a monthly basis. Now we need to know on a daily basis. Otherwise, most of the business will not survive. So we need to know how much cash we really need to survive to that crisis. And after that, to keep investing, to grow, and to get the spaces of the ones that will be dying because of the crisis. Another very strong trend is about the mergers and acquisitions. So crises are very powerful triggers for M&A. So a lot of companies will be in needs for cash, and other companies that are more structured and have more cash, they will be acquiring smaller companies, be looking for opportunities to grow their operations via inorganic acquisitions, inorganic growth, trade sales. So it's an opportunity for both sides, for the sales side and for the buy side. According to some statistics, of previous crises, so the best deals will arise from the 6 months just after the crisis is gone. So it's a huge window of opportunity if you take the 6 months of crisis plus more 6 months of the recovery period at least. So most of the opportunities will be in the second part. And this means that if you are able to survive and to take advantage of this crisis period, being on the sell side, to restructure the company in order to increase the valuation, to recover the drop of valuation that you have been having maybe facing during the crisis, you can get a better deal. So surviving is not only a requirement. There's another requirement, which is how you position in order to keep the value, to retain the value of the company, to keep the valuation at an acceptable level for an acquisition, for a trade sales of a company. And the ones with money will be buying everything. So China is already in the market, buying companies all around the world. They did it in the last two crises, they will keep doing. So private equity funds are super active now. It's a good moment for them. So any moment with volatility has amazing opportunities for people, companies with cash. And the last one, not also extremely important, is the internationalization. So there's a little bit of, continuation when you say digitalization and internationalization. So these two things can come together, and this is actually a strategy of many countries. You go digital first, and then you internationalize, and digital can be an enabler for internationalization. So the new working culture that we have that is much more flexible is not only for our staff, for our company, can be also for our partners. So handling partners from overseas or establishing partnerships from overseas without the need of being face-to-face all the time, traveling all around, is becoming much more acceptable. So companies recently have been signing deals without even meeting their partners face-to-face, never. So this is a very big shift, and makes internationalization much lighter, much easier to implement. So obviously there are other checks that need to be put in place, but this flexibility that we are getting makes things much faster and much easier to implement for any company that wants to go global. The last pillar is the opportunities that we spotted for Singaporean companies. So some of these opportunities are linked to the government support that we have in Singapore. I'm not only talking about cash, about the grants, I'm also talking about the environment that is available for Singaporean companies, the technologies that are available that you can license under one of the technology institutes that we have in Singapore, or even the knowledge that is a focus of the government to train, empower, knowledge about overseas market, knowledge about working capital, how to manage a company, a business properly, most for SMEs. So there are lots of support available in different directions, and the government has a very clear focus on strengthening the Singaporean companies to overcome the crisis and to be in a better position after the crisis to grow, be competitive on a global scale. So the second one's workforce transition. So we live in a world of changes. So change is becoming super active, super fast now. So in 2020 alone, we had a commercial crisis, a international trade crisis between US and China that started last year. We had an oil crash. Now we have a COVID, and the whole impact that COVID is bringing to the economies all around the world, pushing logistics all around the countries, pushing different health sector, construction, totally stuck on a global scale. So the transition of workforce, there will be a lot of retrench, from one sector for one company. So a lot of people will lose their jobs. So it's extremely important for companies and people as individuals, employees, to be aware that these movements are happening. It doesn't mean that you will be unemployed forever or the company will be down forever. You keep aware that the government is already putting a lot of focus on shifting people from one sector to new different areas, to new job scopes, and training is very key for that. So there's a lot of support also under Singapore to shift this workforce from one sector to another sector in order to not grow unemployment rates so heavily. And Singapore is quite interesting because even though we are in crisis, right, the unemployment rates are super low. It's still very low. So it's more of a frictional unemployment, the growth that we see now, because people is still, even during the crisis, most of people can relocate to different activities. The main issue now is like for elder people beyond 55, if they want to relocate or they need to find another job, is a little bit more complicated. But I'm sure that the Singapore government will try to address this point. The third bigger opportunities, and probably this is the one of the biggest or the biggest, is the e-commerce trend. So e-commerce is an enabler for Singaporean companies to internationalize, to go overseas. And a lot of support is also available for e-commerce. So it's also a way for retailers to respond to the drop of activity that they have. So they can set up a more flexible model and approach the existing the markets that they're already in with their physical structure. They can shift the physical structure to the online sales and also approach overseas. So in this sense, there's a lot, a different role that the traditional retail will take is more to position a brand, to position the products, and to, instead of really bringing sales. But we have in the panel also people that are much more specialized than me to talk about that. So I'll leave to the panelists to explore this topic more. E-commerce, definitely an enabler and one of the biggest winners of the crisis. Telemedicine, we are still in the beginning of this trend, but there are already 11 startups exploring telemedicine in Singapore. Now we have a very strong push to use telemedicine as a key trend to make health a little bit more democratic and easy to cover mainly bigger countries. So Singapore is not a big problem, but after COVID times, during COVID times, obviously, if you can go to a consultation online without exposing yourself to the crisis, to the virus, is much better. But it's an enabler telemedicine is an enabler to make the health system more affordable and easier to access to many people all around the world. Cloud kitchen, this is a more specific opportunity for one of the biggest and most important sectors that we have in Singapore, which is F&B. So F&B is one of the sectors that hires most people in Singapore. It's a big part of the Singaporean economy. And so when you cannot sell via your traditional shops, brick and mortar stuff, you need to sell online. So, but to sell online, you also need to shift business models. And this is what some companies are doing now. So they are coming together to dilute, to split the investments in an industrial kitchen, and also to invest, to split the cost, the fixed costs of setting up not only the kitchen, but the maintenance of that, the rentals and everything. So there's a very interesting opportunity of cloud kitchen available in the market now. Grab is already taking advantage of that. The big chains used to do that when they have scale, but with this new concept and this smart arrangement, it's probably an alternative that for smaller restaurants, smaller scale F&B shops come together and build a model that is more light in terms of cost and much more scalable. And the last one is the domestic supply production. So this crisis made very evident that Singapore reliance on international supplies is critical. So and we cannot keep like that forever, right? So obviously Singapore can carry stocks of food, but if you have a little bit more of independence in terms of food supplies for key products, it's important. So mainly fresh products. That's why you produce locally. So you cannot rely on the international, global logistics. So there are some initiatives available in order to push the growth of urban farming and production of some eggs and fishing and some interesting F&B structure, and they did interesting food production structures. So it's not about consuming too much space. It's more about leveraging on technology to concentrate a little bit more production within Singapore and rely less on international supplies. So when we have any logistic disruption, we can survive for more time. Okay, so that's all from me. So this is the last topic that I want to highlight. So we cover three topics in each, 6 topics in each of the 3 trends that we see in terms of opportunities. And now I pass my word to Ina. Thank you.
Thank you, Aidin. Our goal today is that whatever your role is in the industry, you will take away with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy that you can apply to be more successful in your area of work. So here's the format to give you an idea what to expect next. For the first round of panelist discussion, we'll take a few moments for each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share their views on arising opportunities post-COVID. For the second round, I'll kick off the conversation asking questions that draw out some of the high-level themes and trends we should be thinking about. Sound good? Great. Let's get started with the panel introduction. It is our pleasure to have the following panelists to join us today. Ms. Rose Tong, Executive Director, Singapore Retailers Association. Mr. Ni Pai Chi, VP, INO Singapore Guangzhou Knowledge City Investment and Development. Mr. Michael Tan, CEO, Singapore Productivity Center. Mr. Hee Jo Liang, Deputy Principal Development, Singapore Polytechnic. For the first round of discussion, I would like to invite all panelists to briefly introduce themselves and share their views on opportunities arising from post-COVID-19. Ladies first, Rose.
Hi, I'm Rose Tong, Executive Director of Singapore Retailers Association. It's a pleasure to be on board this webinar, which is actually quite interesting. Webinar as in being a Wednesday. Okay, I think Aidin has actually covered, a host of, issues actually confronting us, the retailers, in how to do the business, etc. I guess right now, retailers are seriously in a survival mode. They are facing huge financial stress. There's also, huge financial obligations arising from, zero sales to, now the reopening and yet not meeting the sales target. But this is also a very exciting period for retailers, and this is an opportunity for them to review their business model and to actually look at how they can actually stay relevant and literally start perhaps even from zero budgeting do that. Of course, digitalization has actually taken on an exponential growth, particularly in the e-commerce sector, because this was the only way to look at an alternative sales revenue. Of course, for some, it will actually be to augment, but the e-commerce has actually helped generate profits for them. But with that was also perhaps also a lack of understanding of how it works. And with that, sometimes if you're not doing your own e-commerce, you do not have the customer information, and therefore you are unable to analyze the data, which is important for your business. So the pivoting, of course, has to come with a strategy of what do you really want to get out of your business. Of course, I think at this point in time, there's a huge opportunity for cross-market collaboration, not just locally, but also overseas. But looking at local, what's stopping the F&B operator from partnering a retail, store to just say, hey, after you bought, after you've eaten a meal, taken a meal, maybe you can cross over and buy something. So I think this is a time for a tighter knit kind of a family in ecosystem between retailers as well as F&B operators. But above all, I think at the end of the day, really is branding your product. And, you need to really stand out from the market, because, you could have a physical store, you could be on e-commerce, etc. But why do people want to buy from you? You have to have a story to tell. You have to have that conviction, and people need to buy into your into your game, and that's where you can actually then experience the business growth. So I think these are very timely at this point in time to really seriously review the business model of your business to stay relevant, and then you can actually take off from there. And you must be prepared to let go if things are not really working, and to revisit and see what else can I do.
Next, maybe we can have Pai Chi.
I have to turn on. Hello.
Hi.
Is my mic on? Yeah. It is great to meet everyone through this webinar. I'm Ni Pai Chi. I'm the Vice President of Sino Singapore Guangzhou Knowledge City Investment and Development Company. I've been with the project for the last 10 years. My company is a joint venture established by Capital Land and Guangzhou Development District. The company was set up to develop the China Singapore Guangzhou Knowledge City, or known as GKC, a master development supported by both Singapore and China government as a state level cooperation project. The 178 square kilometer GKC is positioned as a unique, vibrant and sustainable city, highly attractive to both talents and knowledge-based industries. GKC is attractive to many Singapore companies who wish to enter China market through a trusted government-supported project. Back to this post-COVID-19 opportunities, Aydin gave a very comprehensive analysis. From my background, I see the opportunities in a slightly different angle. It can be summarized in 3 letters: IAB. I means internet-related application. During the pandemic lockdown, we suddenly realized that internet is so important to us. Internet enabled the people in the street to do traditional things remotely. In the past few months, we all become expert of video conferencing, like using Zoom, and we are also experiencing the increased use in e-commerce, telemedicine, online education. So I think there's virtually no limit to the internet application space. So this I is one of the opportunities. Next, about A. A is for AI or automation. I think humans are affected by pandemic, but we can use computer in factory automation, use robot in the service industry, and use AI in the online learning. Recently, I even see a Singapore company setting up an online learning business using computer AI to coach the students. So the deployment of AI or robot is a way to stop the spread of pandemic. And next letter is B. B is for biotechnology. Needless to say, during the post-COVID, there is a strong, during or after the COVID, there will be a strong demand for biotech companies in the area like speedy diagnosis, cure, vaccine development, and prevention like sanitization. So you can understand the trend just by looking at the share price of the biotech companies in the equity market in the last few months. So in conclusion, I see internet, AI, biotechnology to be the opportunity in the post-COVID era. Back to you.
Next, maybe we can have Michael.
Yeah, let's unmute my microphone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Singapore Poly for inviting me to this webinar. The last we checked before we started this, possibly about 100 over participants. So I've been through a couple of webinars, and the thing is, sometimes because you cannot see the audience, it's very different from one-to-one session. So quite a few of the webinars in the past, the joke fell flat. I don't know whether people laugh or they cry or whatever. So I guess I'm just talking to a camera right now. Okay, anyway, so my name is Michael. I'm the CEO of Singapore Productivity Center. I'm also the Executive Director of Singapore Productivity Association. So the Singapore Productivity Center was set up in 2013. For those who do not know us, we were set up with the support of Spring Singapore then. And after the merge with IE, is now known as Enterprise Singapore. We are one of the productivity center endorsed by the National Productivity Council, which now has been renamed a few times. It's now the Council for Future Economy, chaired by EPM Mr. Heng. Our heritage is really not for profit. Our parent association is Singapore Productivity Association, and it was set up in 1973 by the then National Productivity Board. So then we were affiliated to the National Productivity Movement. For those who are around my age, you probably remember the Bs and all the productivity movement and the drive. So how do we go about helping SME in Singapore Productivity Center? Our mandate is really to help drive productivity improvements, innovation, as well as looking at how we can help companies to improve their productivity through job redesign, process redesign, and things like that. And coming to the question, I haven't forget on what are the opportunity available. So I guess there are a lot of talks on opportunity already. In this pandemic time, it's like the worst of time, but it's also the best of time. The biggest opportunity I see here is actually government assistance. Right? Nowhere in the world do you see such a generous amount of government assistance. So you have unprecedented four budgets in a year, make history this year, 2020. So the first budget is the unity budget. Second one is the resilient budget, and then the solidarity budget and the fortitude. So you have URSF, translated to you are so fortunate. Okay, so so fortunate because there's 93 billion, and how much is 93 billion? 93 billion is 93,000 million, which means that if I give to 93,000 people, overnight there will be 93,000 millionaires. Or if you take in the context of a big sweep, 2.3 million per ticket win, then you can win 40,000 times if you are the only one, 40,434 times the big sweep. That is the magnitude. But that said, the reality on the ground is like what I echo what Rose said. It's about survivability. Right? There are many grants hanging around, many resources that can tap on. But the reality on the ground is this COVID-19, what it has changed is the driver of your business has changed. Your cost structure remains the same. You, for example, a retailer or F&B operator, you go and take a mall space, open shop, because the mall promise you a certain footfall to come to the place. And therefore, based on the footfall, you calculate how much people can I sit in this space, how much money can I make. So by and large, we do benchmarking every year, so we know the profitability is probably around 8 to 12% for F&B, for example. And now with safe distancing, the space cut by half, people dine more at home. Even if you do delivery, you probably pay more to the platform. So end of the day, most of the cost driver won't change. So I also attest to Arvin's statement earlier, how to build flexibility in your costs so that you find ways to optimize your fixed costs, but be flexible, very flexible on the variable costs. So that's one of the areas that can probably look at, because this is the new normal. Unless vaccine can be found or there's herd immunity, which I think certain European countries and US is probably gaming on herd immunity, given the way that they have go out and enjoy themselves. So in my opinion, the luck favors the prepared. So opportunity will also favor those who are more prepared to change. Because I recall one strategy course I attended many years ago. That shows how old I am. The only question takeaway for me is my lecturer telling me why in the dying or sunset industry, there are still some that are thriving and there are others who are failing. Right? So after this entire bloodbath, right, you will see many casualties, but you will also see many green shoots of new one sprouting up. So in a nutshell, it's really to think about how you want to reframe the question, rethink about your business model so that you can reset the business model and you rethink along the line where the earlier speaker has all shared, the line of digitalization, the line of technology, the line of new consumption pattern, because consumption pattern change, right? And then there are a lot more digital native. I think now they cannot say digital native are millennial. After the 1,000 digital ambassadors go out, all the senior will be digitally enabled, including my parents. And then new supply chain as well. And you will see many different opportunities in those areas. And particularly also e-commerce. So earlier, Alvin also talked about e-commerce. And we are working with ESG on the e-commerce booster package to help the retailers to get on board digital marketing in a quick way, right? And then get them quickly up to speed. Thank you.
Next, can we have Joe?
Hello, I'm Joe. I'm the Deputy Principal for Development. Basically what it means is anything that deals with the industry, whether it's for partnership, whether it's to train them, transform them, or whether to introduce new technology to them. This division works on it. The good thing about it is that everything is under one division. So therefore, I can kind of mobilize a lot of resources to kind of cater to the different needs of different companies, and it has proven to be very successful for SP. And this is something that we are quite delighted that we are structured this way. So let me kind of maybe take a more personal sharing. And so I will talk about some of the internal things that we went through. And I also talk about externally, the second part of it, where we help companies. So as a DP for development, I actually have 4 business units under me, and they have P&L. And so the police don't really support us. So we have our bottom line. So our business is, as you can know, is our core business is training and consultancy. They are the people type of work. Face-to-face is our mode of operandi last time. And when COVID first hit, we were all like a bit shocked. Hey, how man? Training next week, how? Yeah. And so I told them 2 things. One, you must think differently. Yeah, find a way to think differently. Your operation must be different. And look into things that you always wanted to do but didn't have time to do. Now, like what Aidin mentioned, extra time. Let's go and really do those things and to make our product, our operation more streamlined. So the first one, what did I do? I basically said, okay, we still have to continue our training. There's no such thing as a lull period during this time. So we start to experiment with Zoom and find out all the different kind of engaging tools that can make the Zoom training more fun. And surprisingly, we actually, for the last 2 months, trained about 631 people. And so I said, quite respectable actually. But more importantly, we found that companies actually prefer this mode of training because they don't, you know, in future, the employees don't have to leave the company to go for training. They can do it in their office or, you know. And so actually word got around and more companies are now coming to us to say, hey, you know, I heard about this training that you have. Can we do more of that? So that was good. In fact, we got so gung-ho about this. We are planning to hold a very big conference, about 800 people in October. We call it the Design Thinking Summit. Yeah. And so we're going to, again, use Zoom-like kind of platform where the morning session is for 800 people. And then the afternoon session, we have breakout session like Zoom rooms there. And everything, there will be a lot of collaboration and all that. But the beauty of this was that we used to have the Design Thinking Summit. And the problem has always been to attract overseas participants because they have to fly to Singapore just for 1 day, you know, and it's quite difficult. So now with this, actually now we are getting quite a number of overseas participants. For them, it's like, hey, I really want to understand design thinking. I really enjoy this, you know, industry track where you talk about design thinking for a particular sector. Hey, can I join now? And they say, yeah. In fact, now with this, we are able to reach out to more overseas participants. So in a way, yes, it was a crisis for us, but after a while, you kind of really put your you know, thoughts to it. It becomes a silver lining. In fact, I would say now maybe it will become our new norm. Yeah. So this is something that we are quite excited about. And then for things that we wanted to do, but we never, we always postpone is. We became quite famous for design thinking, and so many companies will come to us and say, hey, I need my companies to be innovative. Can you train 6,000 of my staff? Then we look at them and say, no, 6,000 I can't. But now with the allow period, we actually started to do product development. And many of them, in fact, 3 of the products for innovation, for financial literacy, and also for our internationalization. will be launching in early of January. So again, you can see that because of this COVID, we actually, I would say, come out hopefully better off and more equipped, more streamlined for the future. Yeah. So this is something that you can think of it as internally. But externally, we have been actually going around working with companies even before COVID to tell them that there's this tsunami of change coming, digitalization, Industry 4.0, and we are quite excited about it, and we have been talking to many companies. And so because of this COVID, I think the digitalization effort actually kind of expedited, yeah, because companies realize, hey, I really need to do that. So we have a special unit that does what we call company workforce transformation. Like some of the speakers before me mentioned that the government is quite generous if you want to transform. I think the government rather fund you to transform you so that you can be competitive after COVID. So we are actually right now working with at least 44 companies right now as we speak to help them in the transformation. And the moment they have make a decision to move forward, the team will then correspond with them. Okay, what are the various things? So like for instance, a good case was Chevron overnight. They decided to go into digitalization, and we actually went in there to help them in the digitalization effort, and they became a Skills Future Employer Year award winner because of that. And so these are the type of things that you can do. The other thing that we also like to look into, and hopefully after post-COVID, we realize that we need to automate, and in fact, hopefully automate it to the point that the operation can still run when you cannot be in the office or in the factory. Is to use the Industry 4.0 to do automation and all that. And this again is something that we will be happy to kind of work with companies to say, okay, how can we help you in this whole automation process? And we have facilities that can let you touch, feel, and relate to, yeah, in this whole transformation process. Lastly, of course, like everybody mentioned, because we are a kind of a statutory board, we actually do a lot of support companies with various types of funding that the government is made available. And so we will actually help companies to do that. So like for instance, companies now want to say, hey, can I have a automated guided vehicle to help me in my manufacturing side of it? We not only kind of introduce the technology to them, we also kind of work with ESG to come up with kind of, in a way, some grants for them so that it makes adoption easier. So there are quite a lot of things that first, I think if you want to go into COVID, you really need to change your mindset. Because if you don't change your mindset, business as usual, then you'll be sitting there and waiting for, it's a doomsday. I think change your operation, that's one thing. The other thing is work with organizations like the polytechnics, where we can go in and also kind of help you in your transformation so that you come out stronger and hopefully better prepared for the post-COVID period. So thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Okay, what I can conclude is I think being agile in the way of working and thinking is critical. Being innovative, being creative, and being explorative. Next, I'll have a question for each of the panelists. We'll start off with Rose. What do you envision the future landscape to be like for Singapore retailer? Rose, you need to unmute.
Okay. Well, as I've mentioned earlier, I think it's really quite challenging given the current pandemic situation and the weakened economy. So retailers would really have to be very creative, very innovative, and in the words of everybody else, really the leadership has to change the mindset in terms of how they operate, in terms of systems, in terms of technology adoption, to really keep up with the times and to look at efficiency and productivity. in addition to that, I think it is also a lot to do with, investment in its retail workforce so that they are well equipped and they can also, understand better why they're doing what they're doing rather than just being in the store. It's a very challenging and sometimes, it's a whole mindset about branding themselves. They could be around for like 25 years, but you still need to get your message out down there. You still need to sell that story. So I think in the retail landscape right now, everyone is, looking at, people are not buying, what can I actually do? They really need to work with perhaps other retailers, work with, the tourist, the attraction sector, and work beyond and outside of their own comfort zone of, oh, I'm just reopening a shop and, I have and the traffic, in a mall, or rather the mall, guarantees me a certain number of traffic, and then that's it. So experimental, perhaps even, to really, reach out. And of course, the other aspect of it is internationalization, whereby you may not necessarily be internationalizing with a physical store, overseas, but you can actually do that with, cross-border e-commerce. Of course, it's a little bit of a painful process, to start up with deliveries, with all the, warehousing, etc. But it is a move to get your product out of Singapore, knowing that in Singapore you have a very, very limited population base, a consumer base. So if retailers really want to, have to experience business growth, then this is the whole mindset, do, digitalization, internationalization, and really brand themselves to get the eyeballs. Yeah.
So maybe put it this way, if Singapore retailers, right, they were to move at the forefront, I believe at the ecosystem, some will be affected because they need to catch up with the Singapore retailer, assuming that they're at the forefront. So who do you think that will be most affected in the ecosystem?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
Or for the, okay. Who would be most affected? I guess at the end of the day, right now the leasing decisions of all retailers hinge really on operating costs, hinge, greatly on the economy, etc. And with the projection that right now discretionary retail is unlikely to, it's going to be hugely affected, and they do not expect business to be back by, or rather to be down, by at least 50%. It really would be the retail workforce or the local workforce, or the retail workforce which will be affected, because with store closures, with downsizing, with productivity and digitalization, etc. There might be less need for more staff, so their livelihood is at stake, job losses, etc. So I think that would be the most immediate impact. Yeah.
Thank you, Rose. Next, I would like to ask Michael. So in your opinion, which skills do successful leaders need in order to navigate the organization of the future post-COVID?
Thank you for the question. From where I last checked, skills, the definition of skills is the ability to do something well. And if you do it very well, it becomes an expertise. Okay? However, I would like to think that in terms of skills, two categories of thoughts. One is enterprises in different industry require different skills. Enterprises in different stages of growth require different skills. Right? For example, industry-wise, a professional services firm, accounting services, legal, lawyer, you need to be very skillful in providing the professional service. Right? Then, in order for your business to grow. In the F&B, you need, of course, the bar get higher and higher every now and then. You need to have the ability to serve good food so that people can come back and patronize you again and again. So in the neighborhood convenience store, you need to be able to know what are the needs of the residents in your vicinity so that you can stock up the right merchandise mix. So that is also skills. Over time, the skill will become experience. So in terms of stages of growth of a company, a startup will probably need to power and do everything, right? So after you manage to cross the startup stage, you probably need to use your experience to build that company. Then after you, assume you are lucky, because assume you are lucky, you can grow beyond the startup and the experience phase. Then you probably need system and process. But not everyone is skillful in system and process, right? But that is the phase that you need to skill more. Then after that, when you grow beyond the system and process phase, you then probably need to know about culture, know about people, talent attraction. Because by then, the people that you start up with, that you can tap on their shoulder and talk to them, will probably be an organization of 200, you don't even know who's who really, right? So then how do you manage that kind of business? It's probably more on culture, values, shared values and kind of things. So I think to use, it's hard to generalize what skills you need to navigate in this post-COVID organization. Rather, I want to share my observation, in my humble opinion, from the many businesses that we have worked with. What are the 5 key traits, for example, that will give them a stronger edge to rebound faster? Right? So number 1, be paranoid. The very successful one have rebound again and again, despite whatever challenges, is to be really paranoid. And I think in our pioneer generation, a lot of the leaders are paranoid. Okay? So having a paranoid mindset is something that will drive you to really find opportunity, mitigate costs, and do a lot of things. So being paranoid is very important. And paranoid is not a disease, by the way, it's just a mindset. And 2 is have an open mind, because the mind is like a parachute, right? It doesn't work if you don't open it, so have an open mind. 3rd is resilient. So resilient is best explained by the 打不死的小强怕没戏啊. So that kind of resilience mentality, very important. 4th, I think, is adaptability. So adaptability is not about going with the flow, but adapt with the trend and know when to put your ego at home, because there are certain trends that you simply cannot fight on. Right? Like for example, this COVID thing, the macro environment changes, everybody impacted. If you think that you can churn through, by all means go ahead. But a lot of time to take a hard look and a cool head to look through everything and see how viable it is. Or should you then take a back seat, stay on the sideline, wait for a new equilibrium to come, and then join again if you really cannot see what an opportunity. The last trait is humility. And why humility is very important? Because this is probably the time now that you need to go and follow through to your staff, to your supplier, of the changes that you're undergoing. For example, staff, you need to tell them, can you be with me? I need to cut your pay by 30-40%. I need to ask you to take no pay leave. You will tell your vendor, please don't sue me. Although now you cannot sue, temporary measure, temporary deal measure, you cannot sue. So humility becomes another key trait that you need to do, because you become the change agent. You are the biggest change agent. Successful leader is the change agent, because environment change, you change, therefore you have to change your system and your workers. Okay, I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I'll have Pai Chi. Singapore is one of China's biggest investors. Do you foresee any changes post-COVID? Any advice for Singapore investor wanting to venture into China?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, Singapore, being a small country, has been the biggest foreign investor in China for the past few years, surpassing US, EU, and Japan. Maybe this is not known to many people. So I think our position as the top foreign investor in China probably would not change post-COVID-19. I foresee that there will be more Singapore companies going into China. You can see that with the control of movement across border, it is more efficient and effective to be in the country to do business than from outside. And since China is among the first to overcome the pandemic, it will be natural for more Singapore companies to go into China to explore the 1.3 billion market, while other economies remain closed. If you ask me, what is the advice for the companies? There are a few G2G projects in China that are fully supported by the government through Enterprise Singapore, ESG, namely the Suzhou Industrial Park, Tianjin Eco City, Chongqing CCI project, and my project, Guangzhou Knowledge City. They are all located strategically in different regions of China. It would be easier. My advice is for the Singapore company to choose one of them as a springboard to go into China. For example, of course, I come from Guangzhou Knowledge City. I have to sell Koyok for my project. Guangzhou Knowledge City is located in the core area of Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. This is a key integrated economic hub, which is slated to become the world's largest bay economy. So for companies who want to enter China, of course, you can try to enter China through GKC, through my project. We have a team in Singapore as well as in China to assist the SMEs and hold your hand in the journey. On top of that, GKC, our project, as well as ESG, jointly set up a Singapore Business Service Center in GKC to provide business space and support to new entrants into China. On top, the first-timer to GKC also enjoy up to 70% of subsidies on the cost that you spend from ESG under the MRA, Market Readiness Assistance Scheme. It is especially useful for SME to make use of this scheme and assistance when they want to enter China. Thank you.
Thank you, Pai Chi. Joe, what is critical in terms of mindset change for business leaders to stay ahead post COVID-19?
Yeah, I think even before COVID came, what we have always said is that things are changing very fast, and through digitalization, Industry 4.0. But COVID bring in a new dimension that you can be hooking from the left, and you have what we call unexpected change. So with all this tsunami of change, of fast changing and unexpected change, I think what is most important for us is to have a what I call a growth mindset. A growth mindset is someone who kind of like see this challenge, these changes as challenge that he can embrace. Yeah, and if you feel that if you have that kind of mindset, then some of these changes doesn't look that daunting. Yeah, and in fact, compared to a fixed mindset person, if you are fearful, then you are stuck. You can't do anything. Yeah. So having this growth mindset is something that I find that's very important for companies to ride this tsunami of change. So that's one. Second is that you must also look into how can you kind of skill up your staff. Yeah, because very soon what you will find is the competitiveness of companies is based on the expertise, like what Michael mentioned, of the staff, and to do certain projects. So for instance, if you go and look at IT, the half-life of IT knowledge is less than 1 year. Yeah, and so it's changing very fast. And so for this extreme case, if your staff are not the type that will have this, what we call learning agility, the ability to track or spot emerging skills trend, and the ability to say, I own this, I want to go and learn this new skill. When new projects come on board that requires the emerging skills, companies will not be able to bid for it. In fact, when I went to America last year, I visited this company called Pluralsight, and they became a unicorn in less than a year, after getting listed. And I asked them, are you a content company? He said, no, I'm not. In fact, I go into Fortune 500 companies, and all I do is to kind of train their people to constantly pick up new skills. They even have a term, you call it skills IQ, and to build up the skills DNA of the company to win projects. And they are in 70% of the Fortune 500 companies. So it is that kind of mindset, even for big companies, that the staff needs to have the learning agility, and the management needs to have what I call the growth mindset to kind of say, hey, all this change come forward, I will embrace this challenge. I think if you have both of these, I think you can ride through a lot of this tsunami of change. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I believe I'm a big believer of growth mindset. Okay, so now I'll open up to the panelists because there are some questions from the audience. So the first one, manpower and digitalization is one of the main challenges we have now. Even with government support, it is still very challenging. What do you advise for companies, especially SME, to keep pushing forward and try to stay existent?
Can I take this question first?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, in fact, when we embark on this skills future and ITM, these were the exact concerns. In fact, when we first went in, we thought, oh, it's very easy. Just tell the company, these are skills future, there's lots of grants, you will change. But many companies actually sit on the fence. Because for them, this jump to Industry 4.0 digitalization is a big jump. So what we have done is we work with SME, especially SME. We journey with them. We say, hey, hello, you have the CNC machine that's out there. There's your workhorse. It's still working. But I can sensorize it so that I can extract data, so that you can know that, oh, how much the machine has been pushed. When do they need maintenance, predictive maintenance? And so from step by step, from 2.0, I can move you to 2.5 to 3.0 to 4. And we even built a facility to allow them to touch, feel, and sense. So the whole idea is to remove that fear. And we have this pedagogy called mindset, skill sets, and behavior. The whole idea of mindset is we know everybody has fear when you embark on this digitalization and Industry 4.0. So our job is to relax your mind so that your mind is open, like one of the panelists have mentioned. After you have opened up your mind, then you go and do skill set. But after your staff have been trained, the last thing they need is to come back to the company and it looks business as usual. So we also help them in the transformation and all that. So I have a special unit that does that to kind of handhold companies through this journey. Okay?
Anyone want to add on? Okay, if not, I'll move on to the next one. The question from the audience, do you think it will help companies to redesign jobs, and how?
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You try.
In the last 1-2 years, and particularly the last few months, we have been doing quite a number of job redesign projects. So we started with working on F&B industry, doing job redesign for F&B companies. And then in the last few months, we then extended that through grant support from WSG on the lifestyle sector. The lifestyle sector includes F&B, tours and attractions, and caterers, retailers, and many other subsectors. And then we look at the companies to look at what are the areas that the job can be redesigned. In my opinion, job redesign is a derived thing, right? So you don't put job redesign in front. As in, don't go in and say that, hey, I want to redesign the job of my worker. Therefore, you think, or maybe I should design this way, redesign that way, right? But a lot of time it comes from back to the business model. What is the business model now? And particularly to maybe just share a bit about on the earlier question. If the SME want to stay in existence, you just take out your spreadsheet, you do a business viability test. Right? In this climate, you estimate your sales go down by this, your cost component, how much you can squeeze, how much cash you have, you know how many more months you can survive. Right? If you want to survive longer, you pump in more cash. Or you pivot your business. change to something else. Now, if you then change to something else, whether is it using technology, changing of your work processes, changing of your jobs and skills so that you can multi-skill someone to do many other people things. Of course, in the process, please pay them a little bit more. Then your job redesign makes sense because you are coming from a perspective of changing the model, pivoting the model to adapt. Then whatever you adopt, then flow into the job that you have to redesign, and therefore the new skills to acquire, and then you'll be helpful.
I fully agree with Michael. In fact, you have to look at the business side first. Yeah, does it make sense? What is the problem area and all that? And I give you a real example because it's been published, so I can talk about it. Shell has a loop plant in Tuas. Yeah, and it's a manual plant. So everything, muscle is a lot of carrying here and there. But they kind of recently, 2 years ago, decided to move in, it was in Woodlands. They decided to move into a digital plant in Tuas. And they are very confident that the productivity can improve by 5 times. And we actually went there and saw the thing. Wow, it's really a very streamlined process. But the workers in there, they are from the manual plant. So Shell can take 2 approaches. Of course, fire all of them, or Shell can retrain them, reskill them, but more importantly, redefine their job scope. So actually, what happens is the workers have been asking Shell to say, "Hey, can I get more salary, more salary?" And in the lubrication industry, the margin is very low. But if you can improve the productivity, and if you are willing to embrace digitalization, then the company is more profitable. Then there's a lot more room for discussion, for salary growth and all that. So this was a very good example where we actually went in there to do job rescoping, and in the process help the companies, help the workers to have what we call a win-win situation through job redesign. So we have quite a number of these kind of examples. So recently a construction company say, okay, I want to improve efficiency. I want to use BIM, building information modeling. We actually went in there to help them to build up that capability. But after you build up the capability, it cannot be business as usual. That means the job cannot be still the same. You have to expand their job scope. And then through the expansion of the job scope, working with the contractors, their subcontractors and all that, you get efficiency, but the job scope of your staff also expand, and hopefully with that, everybody wins. They get a bigger paycheck, the companies is more efficient, and they are able to do it much faster, and be more competitive. I think this is the type of mindset that companies must have. It cannot be like what Michael say, status quo. Then if status quo, then you are likely to be renegated, I mean, to be very frank, by this fast-changing world of digitalization and Industry 4.0, and now with the unexpected change of COVID also to take into consideration. I think these are the type of things that I hope the companies can kind of embrace change, and I think it's exciting.
Thank you, panelists. Next, I'll pass over to Aidin again to summarize today's key takeaways. Aidin, please.
Hello again. Thank you, Ina. Thank you, panelists. I believe it was a very productive panel with meaningful questions. And I'm going to summarize now some of the key takeaways that I wrote down during the discussion. So first, we got from Rose that retailers are obviously on survival mode with huge financial obligations, and obviously the local workforce will suffer. But there are many opportunities for companies now to review their business models to stay relevant. So e-commerce is definitely helping companies to generate new revenue streams. And there are also opportunities that are cross-sector collaborations between retailers and F&B in order for them to build a more light model with fixed costs under control and leverage on their synergies to reposition and to grow. And in this moment, branding will be key for retailers, because once they go online, the brand awareness will be super important. The way consumers build reference about brands, about products is highly related to the efforts that you put on branding. From Pai Shi, he brilliantly summarized the three main points of and drivers of change that can push companies towards taking advantage of the opportunities of the moment. First is the internet related applications. So all the change that we have seen, Zoom applications and mobile apps all around. So all this technology being applied on not only on our daily lives, but more also on the work side for manufacturing and consumer and retail. A lot of automation has been used in order to leverage on the opportunities of the moment. So automation and artificial intelligence will be key in order for companies to work more competitively. And biotechnology also presents a lot of opportunities for some companies that want to fight the crisis and help building vaccines, building solutions for health systems, and for us to overcome the crisis quickly. So one key opportunity, and more specific, is in between business that we have, Singapore has with China. So since China is one of the first countries to open, there are opportunities that are more immediate from Singaporean companies to expand to China. So we are in a position where now that China is opening and the rest of the world is still closed. So Singapore becomes a more obvious opportunity of 1.4 billion consumer market to Singaporean companies. So China is a key player for Singapore, a key country, a key nation that is partnering Singapore in terms of trading and also opportunities in different areas. From Michael, the moment now is to reset business models along with digitalization and new technologies. So there will be requirements for new skills that is needed by companies from different sectors and from different sizes. So depending on the maturity of the company, the moment that the company is facing, the requirements for skills and the sectors are very different. So the leaders, they need to take ownership and build clarity on what are the skills and knowledge that needs to be developed within the organizations in order for them to overcome the crisis and to grow bigger and to come out stronger from this crisis when the things settles down. So the resiliency mentality and adaptability and humility will be key skills, key attitudes for leaders to overcome the crisis. And from Joe, one of the key points that I highlight here is about the change mindset. So the change mindset is a requirement for the moment. So the speed of change is accelerating, and the companies, they realize that adapting to the changes that we are facing now is not that difficult. So it can be done. We are doing faster than we usually expect. So we don't need to fight against trends that are already there. We don't need to neglect anymore, because now we have technology and we have an environment that provides a lot of stimulus for the change to flourish. So things that you never had time to do or never had stimulus to do, but you know that you needed to do, now is the time. So, and the key point is about developing on the learning side, learning from the situation and transforming from there to be prepared for the new economy, where you have technology and bringing companies to a totally different level in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. So that's the summary that I wanted to provide to you. It's all about mindset, it's all about resiliency, and obviously leaders within the companies, they need to take ownership, because they are the ones pushing the change and giving direction to their teams. I pass to you, Ina. Thank you.
Sure. I hope everyone has a fruitful session today. Before we end, I would like to take the opportunity to thank you all once again, especially to Aideen, Rose, Tai Chi, Michael, and Joe. Our next session will be next Wednesday, 8th of July, 4 p.m., A Roadmap for SME Legal Rights by lawyer Mr. Daniel Tay. Do join us at the next session. Stay safe and see you at our next webinar.